I sighed to myself and closed my laptop. The hurricane-force winds and torrential rain pounding against the office windows drowned out its tiny little built-in speakers easily. I guess I wouldn't be passing the time with Netflix after all. I got up from my desk and walked around the office. The large windows, which normally provided an excellent view of the harbor, were completely blacked out by the storm. Even the large LED floodlights that normally illuminated the parking lot were barely visible through the horizontal deluge of water that the sky was throwing at us. My boss liked to keep someone on overnight in weather like this just in case a boat, or God forbid one of the floating docks, broke free in the wind, but realistically I couldn't see anything, and I certainly wasn't able to go outside if anything did happen tonight. I had sat through thunderstorms in this office before, but this one was especially bad. So much so that even Mike, this guy who lived on his boat all summer, had gone into town to stay with a friend just in case. That's how you knew it was bad. The whole office shook as a wave pounded into the glass that faced out towards the bay. I will never understand why whoever designed this place decided to build the office right on the break wall that protects these small recreational boats from the wrath of the Great Lakes, and furthermore why they decided to make the wall that faces the lake almost entirely out of glass. I guess it's because in normal weather it offers a good view of the water and any vessels entering the harbor, but in storms like this it really makes you feel exposed. I pulled out my phone to check the time. It was just about 2 a.m. Great, just 4 more hours until I can go home and get some sleep. Another wave hit the glass and the office shook again, but this time it was amplified by the loud crack of thunder and lightning that seemed to hit in perfect sync with the wave. I wasn't sure, but I thought for a split second I could see something out in the lake illuminated by the lightning, but of course it was now dark again, so I couldn't check. I told myself it was probably one of the channel marker buoys being thrown around in the waves, and sat back down at my desk. I had only been sitting down for a few minutes when the VHF radio mounted to the shelf above my desk began to crackle. I played with the squelch knob a bit to try and see if I could get a fix on the signal, but I couldn't make out anything. Probably just some interference from all the lightning. Another 5 minutes went by and the radio crackled again, but this time it sounded like a voice, but I couldn't make out what it was saying. I played with the radio settings a bit more to see if I could make it out, but marine VHF radio doesn't have as much that you can adjust compared to CB or ham radio, so there wasn't much I could do. Finally, after a few more minutes, a crystal clear transmission came through the radio that made my blood run cold. Harbormaster, 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 this is Moonshadow, over. The voice was practically screaming into the radio in order to be heard over the howling wind. I froze there for a second, realizing that this meant someone was out there on the lake in this crazy weather. Perhaps what I had seen in the lightning was a boat, but who would be insane enough to venture out in this? As if the storm had read my mind, another flash of lightning followed by an almost instantaneous boom of thunder lit up the night sky, and there, clear as day coming over the top of a massive wave, was a sailboat maybe 10 kilometers offshore. Even with the mainsail fully reefed, the boat was still heeled over at least 45 degrees as it battled with the wind. When everything went dark again, I was still staring in the direction of the boat and realized that it had no lights on, not even the navigation lights, which struck me as odd. But then again, I could only barely see the floodlights in the parking lot, so maybe the storm was obscuring them. Coming back to reality, I snatched the mic for the radio off its mount and pressed down the talk button. Moonshadow, this is Harbormaster, go ahead, over. Ah, thank God, the man on the other end exclaimed. I didn't think anyone would be monitoring the radio this late. It's so good to hear someone's voice. Listen, I'm a 35-foot sailboat, I've lost my engine as well as all electrical power, so I'm on a handheld radio. I need to get out of this storm, but that means I'm gonna have to come into the harbor under sail. I'm gonna need some help on the dock, over. I know I'm terrible for thinking this, but my first thought was, oh great, that means I've gotta go out on the docks in this weather, but I quickly got over it as this man was definitely in trouble. I pulled up the harbor map on the computer that shows which docks are currently occupied and tried to find an easy one for him to sail into. I keyed the mic again. Roger that, Moonshadow, looks like you're in luck. Dock 13, that's Alpha 1, 3, is open and it'll be dead ahead of you once you come around the pier past the beacon light. I'll come catch you there. Thank you. The man's voice replied on the radio. I'll try not to hit it too hard when I come in. He chuckled a little bit, sounding relieved. I keyed the mic again to reply. Don't worry about it, you do what you gotta do to get in safe and we'll clean up the mess in the morning. Harbormaster standing by on 68. Roger, Moonshadow standing by on 68. I grabbed one of the handheld VHF radios off the charger and began putting on my rain gear to head outside. I also grabbed a life jacket because there was no way I was going out on the docks in this weather without one. Even with the break wall protecting the harbor in storms like this, there was often still some wave action moving the docks up and down. I stood there in all my gear staring out the office door, trying to prepare myself for what was to come. Although I couldn't see it, somewhere in that black chaos was a sketchy old Ford F-250 we bought from the city's parks department to use a work truck around the harbor. That would be my safe haven once I left the office. I just had to reach it. The office door was extremely difficult to open, but I managed to push it into the wind just enough to slide out between it and the frame. The wind slammed it shut behind me and I stood there pinned against the wall by the wind. The storm was so loud and all I could see was darkness. I felt so disoriented, but I knew if I just walked forward far enough the truck was straight ahead somewhere. I began placing one foot in front of the other, slowly battling my way through the wind and rain. This was bad enough on land. I couldn't imagine this poor man going through this on a boat that was heaving up and down out there in the waves. After what felt like an eternity, my hand touched something metal in front of me. I felt around a bit and realized it was the tailgate of the pickup truck. Running my hand along the side of the bed, I eventually made my way to the cab, then found the door handle. The dome lights finally allowed me to see something when I opened the door, the wind nearly ripping it off its hinges. It took practically all the strength I had to pull the door shut against the wind, but I managed to do it. I looked back towards the office out the rear window and I could just barely see the lights of the building. Thankfully, between the parking lot floodlights and the truck headlights, I was able to see well enough as I made my way over to the ramp leading down to a dock. My plan was to sit in the truck and wait until the last possible second before running out into the storm to catch the lines of the incoming boat. Truthfully though, I was having my doubts that I would be of any help given the situation outside. The truck rocked from side to side as the wind battered it from outside, but somehow it felt more secure than the glass office. I made it to a dock and parked with the headlights facing out towards the water. The only other light visible was the bright beacon light that cut through the storm out at the end of the pier that was once used for commercial shipping back in the day. In the storm it seemed like a mighty lighthouse, but in reality it was just a galvanized steel tower about 20 feet high with a large LED light affixed to the top. As with many industries, modern technology has removed a lot of that romance of the sea that you see in movies. Still, at this moment I'm sure that poor man thought that light was Jesus himself guiding him to shore. Harbormaster, this is Moonshadow, you there? The man's voice came over the radio I had set on the dash of the truck. Moonshadow, this is Harbormaster. Yup, I am in position at a dock, over. I replied. Good. Would you mind talking to me a bit, about anything? He asked sheepishly. Things are getting pretty nasty out here and well, it makes me feel less alone. I had no idea what to say. What was I supposed to talk about? It felt weird to make small talk with him over the radio, but if it helped him I guess I had to come up with something. Well I guess, what's your name? I asked him over the radio. Robert, he replied, what's yours? I was about to reply when suddenly another flash of lightning lit up the sky, followed by the loudest boom of thunder I have ever heard in my life. Like the bomb dropped on Hiroshima probably didn't make as much noise as this clap of thunder did, that's how loud it was. I ducked down in the truck instinctively out of fear. My ears were ringing and I was amazed the windows hadn't blown out. What the hell was that? I heard Robert yell over the radio. I've lost sight of your beacon light, is everything alright over there? I sat back up in my seat and looked over to where the beacon light should be, and sure enough he was right, there was no sign of it. That lightning strike must have blown the breaker, I'll have to reset it. I replied into the radio. I put the truck in reverse and backed out of the parking space and began driving towards the pier. I dreaded having to get out of the truck to open the electrical panel on the side of the tower, but it needed to be done. At least there was a bit of a canopy over it that would offer me some protection. I reached the pier and turned the truck out onto it and saw one of the most horrific sights I had ever seen. Through the dim headlights I could see what looked like a pile of twisted metal laying on the end of the pier. As I drew closer I could see it was the beacon light tower. It looked like it had buckled and folded in half, and then been welded in that position like some kind of modern art sculpture that had then been kicked over. Some other parts of the tower had been bent outwards like spikes, and in the current weather conditions the whole thing looked like some kind of grotesque creature. Moonshadow, this is Harbor Master, we have a situation. I said into the radio. Looks like that lightning strike took out the whole tower. I didn't entirely believe my own words. That tower got hit by lightning all the time. It had a lightning rod and it was built to take it. It would have taken some serious force to twist and mangle it like what I was seeing in front of me. Well, that would be my luck, Robert said over the radio. I'm on the pier in a pickup truck, can you see my headlights? I quickly asked him. No I don't, he replied after a minute. Just then I remembered when we bought this truck the city hadn't removed any of the warning lights from it. What about now? I radioed back after flicking the switch to turn them on. Yes, I see you, he said excitedly. I felt a bit of relief as another flash of lightning revealed Robert's boat much closer to the harbor mouth now. The thunder came a few seconds later, now indicating the storm was moving away finally. My relief was short-lived however, as the radio suddenly crackled to life again. Shit, god damn it, I heard before the radio cut off again. Robert, are you okay? I asked into the radio, all professional marine radio language being thrown out the window at this point. Yeah, I'm good, just had a knockdown, mast hit the water but the boat righted itself and I'm still on board so. He trailed off. What the hell is that? Robert? I yelled into the radio. Something just ripped out one of my starboard shrouds. He replied. I think it was a wave, but I swear it was like an arm came out of the water and just tore it off. I'm gonna have to tack around, put my port side into the wind to keep the mast up. For those unfamiliar, a shroud is the steel cables on either side of a sailboat mast that keep it up, so losing one is pretty serious. I saw in another flash of lightning Robert begin to turn the boat, but just before everything went dark again the boat rolled onto its side in a wave. I frantically tried to raise him on the radio but it was no good. There was only silence on the radio for a good 5 minutes until another flash of lightning revealed Robert's boat now floating upright again but with no mast. My heart sank. With no engine and no mast he now had no way of reaching land. I still heard nothing, but realizing he was now probably trying to hail the Coast Guard, I quickly switched my radio to channel 16. Sure enough, there was Robert's voice again. Mayday, 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 this is sailing vessel Moonshadow. I am dismasted and drifting with no engine, need immediate assistance, over. Moonshadow, this is the Coast Guard, we can send a vessel to your location but in this weather ETA is an hour, over. At this point I could only listen helplessly and Robert coordinated with the Coast Guard. It was out of my hands now and I drove back to the office. At this point the rain was beginning to let up and visibility was improving as the first glimpses of daylight began to peek over the horizon. When I got back into the office I was glued to the window facing the bay. I didn't care if a wave came and smashed the whole wall and I was watching for any sign of Robert's boat or a Coast Guard ship approaching. With every lightning flash I could see the helpless sailboat being swept farther and farther from shore. Eventually the lights of a Coast Guard cutter came into view from across the bay and I felt a little relief. It was now 5 a.m. and the sun was beginning to rise and the storm was clearing. The waves, however, had not subsided. The sailboat was tossed like a toy as the cutter drew closer. I could see Robert climbing on top of his boat through the binoculars and firing off a flare. No sooner had he done this when two absolutely massive waves a good 15 feet higher than the rest seemed to materialize out of thin air on either side of the boat. It was like the lake had massive jaws it was opening up to swallow the boat, and indeed that's what happened. The water between the waves began to lower, taking the boat with it, and then the massive jaws slammed shut, crushing the little boat like a bug between them, then disappeared amongst the other waves. Just like that, Robert and his boat were gone without a trace. As the sun came up that day, the waves calmed and it turned into one of the most beautiful summer days you've ever seen. They never found a body or even the wreck of Moonshadow. I'm not one to believe in this sort of thing, but there was something about that storm, it wasn't natural. I have never experienced anything like that before, and even the repairmen who came out to rebuild the beacon light were baffled as to how it was destroyed in that manner. I'm convinced that Robert somehow angered the lake, as crazy as that sounds, because something certainly wanted him dead that night. Sure, you could chalk it up to increasingly violent storms due to climate change, but two opposing waves like the ones that swallowed up Robert's boat should not be possible. I don't know what, but something beyond my understanding took him out that night. I am convinced of it. Perhaps the strange phenomenon I witnessed that night is also what caused the unexplained sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald all those years ago, but either way, I don't think I'll be going out on the Great Lakes anytime soon.